All right. Thank you for joining us, Adam. How are you?
Good, good. Hi, Demetrius. Thanks for leading this today.
Yeah, definitely glad to be back. And welcome to all of our members, those who aren't currently members, and those that we hopefully will see as members in the future. Would also like to make sure everybody that's in the South, the East Coast, and everyone who's running into some trouble due to all of this inclement weather, that you stay safe and stay warm, hang in there and stay healthy. We're hoping this passes pretty soon. We're definitely thinking about all of you. So I'd like to welcome Adam again. He's going to give us a little bit of advice, talk about some statistics and some things that we should all be paying attention to as we look towards resuming normal type of employment throughout, after the pandemic and even at the tail end of the pandemic as well.
Cool. Well, thank you, Demetrius, and thank you for everyone who's joined us today. We hope this can be productive, insightful, as we mentioned the last go around, and we'll certainly mention again many times today. We certainly want your feedback, want your recommendations on how we can provide more value through both these webinars, but also through the Steady app as we move forward. Right, our goal, as we've always talked about, is to make sure that we're doing everything we possibly can to give you the greatest opportunity for success in terms of finding new income opportunities and learning how to better understand and guide your income. As we've also talked about, we're only a few-year-old company, so we still have a lot ahead of us. The thing that's most important for us is to hear from our members how we prioritize the tons and tons of ideas that we have and that we hear. So we hope to hear from you at support@steadyapp.com at absolutely any time. Today's topic, as Demetrius talked about, is focused on how do you position yourself to earn post-pandemic and hopefully earn to your potential. We continue to be in a very, very unique time in our history where things are unimaginably tough for far too many of our fellow Americans, and those, quite frankly, around the world. This is a time where it's not easy to find work. It's certainly not easy to find work that is going to pay the bills. And for any of you who have ever felt lonely during this time and feel like you have any concerns or worries about your own capabilities as a result of having challenges during this time, it is not your fault. You are not alone, right? Tens of millions of Americans right now are living in a worse state than they have ever lived in. There is so much that needs to be done, to support you, but also so much that needs to be done to provide you with the information that you need to make the best decisions for yourself in this new world that we're living in. And our goal, and we're going to focus on this today, is to try to arm you with as much information as possible to make the best decisions so that you can produce the best outcome for yourself, right? We really want to drive self-empowerment, drive the ability for you to have better information than you've had before, right? It's far too difficult to understand today what is the right job, what is the best way to earn, what's the best way to earn the most in the time that you have, the experience you have, the skills that you have, and the location that you live, right? Those are all things where that information just hasn't existed. And our goal is to provide you with as much of that as possible. And so we're going to talk to some of this on a high level today. We also have new features in our app in Steady Plus, and we're going to be pulling some of this out of Steady Plus very soon and providing it some of this is a free service to be able to see how other people are earning on the Steady app, and so that we and you can all learn from one another, right? In terms of guiding you on what your earnings potential actually is in certain industries, certain types of work, at certain employers. And we want to provide you not just with how much you're going to make per hour, but what are you likely to make overall per week, every 2 weeks, per month, based on how much time you're going to be used, right? How much you're going to be utilized. And so today, I think we're going to talk at a high level, but from the standpoint of, really focusing on the nitty gritty, the details relative to you yourself. We have now launched the initial component of that in the app, as we've talked about, but we certainly are going to be progressing that quite a bit. It's in its very, very early days, and we're working very hard to progress that. I noticed that Zoom is kind of taking off the right side of my cheek today. I need to turn a little bit more straight with this background, but I promise my face is not beautiful, but I still have all of it. So I'll try to stay straight ahead. So I think in terms of focusing on a bit of information that hopefully will be valuable for you. I read an interesting statistic the other day that 1099 workers, so those that are gig workers, contract workers in America, the number of workers that do that type of work and not just W-2 work has increased by 30% during the pandemic, right? So in just 11 months, 30%, with nearly now 100 million Americans doing 1099 contract and gig work, 100 million. 30% in just a year, less than a year. An astounding figure, right? But also a figure that shows how difficult it is today to find full-time work. For many of you, you don't want to do full-time work, right? You like the freedom, the flexibility to do what you want when you want. But for many of you, you also do want that full-time work, right? That confidence in understanding what you're going to make and over what time period without having to have those worries. And it's becoming far too hard to find yourselves in that full-time work with a 30% increase since the beginning of COVID. So again, remember, you are not alone in the challenges that everyone is facing today. Some other items that I think are important to note. We're going to talk a little bit today about how to find jobs that are going to have the highest growth potential, industries that are going to have the highest growth potential over the coming years. Certain of those were already going to be the case prior to COVID. Certain of those now have adjusted a bit relative to the world that we're now living in. And so there's some new categories that are growing faster than expected, and some others that were expected to grow fast that maybe aren't going to grow quite as fast, right, as a result of the new world we're living in. But what we can say today is, I have some statistics from a group called Opportunity at Work, who produces and publishes some very, very, very interesting data. In that, if you think about over the course of the next, 5 to 10 years, workers today who don't have 4-year college degrees are going to be 4 times more likely to be in jobs that are going to be automated over the next 5 to 10 years than those that have a 4-year bachelor's degree, and 14 times more likely than those that have something more than a bachelor's degree, like a graduate degree from a university. So the importance is that there's still going to be work. There's going to be work available. But a lot of the work that perhaps you have been thinking about and you've been doing over recent years is going to change, right? And what's so important is that specifically post-pandemic, that you have the information necessary to understand how that work is going to change, both in terms of the skills that are going to be required to remain in that same industry, and how you can acquire new skills to be in that industry or other industries that don't require a lot of money or time, because we know you don't have too much of either of those. Not very many of us do, not very many people do today. And so every decision needs to be a very well thought out, well-informed decision. And we hope to arm you with as much of that information as possible to make the right decisions. And then the third is, in general, you may not know that you qualify for jobs that are different than what you would have ever thought you would be working in. And you may have been working in retail sales for 5 or 10 years, right? Prior to the pandemic or even during the pandemic, and not realize that that retail sales experience is incredibly valuable, right? You've developed the ability to understand how to interact with people, how to provide for great customer service. And there's so many facets of the world where there are great opportunities for growth in having great customer service skills, where you're not going to be limited to a certain ceiling on your earnings, right? You're not going to be limited to $12 an hour, $15 an hour, $18 an hour, but where you're going to have room to grow as time goes on. And so we're going to talk about some of those areas again today. But again, we're going to be doing everything that we can as we progress It's Steady to provide more and more detail within the app on how you can really focus on getting closer to your earnings potential and arming you with that data so that you can make the best decisions for yourself. Okay, so another item is that roughly 55% of tasks today, jobs, things that you do on your job, right? So tasks that you do as part of jobs for those individuals that make less than $50,000 a year have a very high risk of automation. So roughly 55% of those tasks are likely to be automated over the course of the next 5 years. If you have a job that is paying you below $50,000 a year. And we're going to talk about the opportunities that exist to move into jobs where you're not going to have that risk, right? Where there's going to be a continued need for humans. Because as we've seen, right, if we think about how employers act in times like these, they act in the interest of improving their profit margins. And, as employers will say, it's a lot easier to hire than it is to fire, right? And once they terminate jobs, they tend not to try to bring them back as quickly as they went away. They tend to invest in things like automation or other types of processes that will prevent them from having to bring back workers. So workers have to look out for themselves. You have to look out for yourself and think about what's right for you, what's going to help you make those best decisions so that you can come out of this hopefully in at least as good, if not better of a position than you were, right, a year ago, during what, obviously has been previously unthinkable times. So, talking about some details now, right, is that there's roughly 120 million people today who are working in the US who don't have a 4-year degree, right? 120 million who are contributing every day, helping us to build the backbone of this country, who don't have a 4-year college degree. It's much more difficult to achieve the type of earnings that you want to achieve without a 4-year degree, but it is achievable, right? 120 million are participating in the U.S. labor force today without a 4-year college degree. Some areas, though, that have a really, really high opportunity for growth over the coming years. The forecasts are very strong. We're seeing that growth already taking place. That growth certainly in certain of these areas will accelerate even further as we get through this pandemic. And hopefully, at least by the end of this year, can return to some type of normalcy or closer to normalcy than certainly we are today. And so we'll start talking about some of those jobs, right? And Demetrius, before I jump in there, would love to hear any comments you have, and perhaps anything that you've been hearing from our members, right, as a head of our member loyalty team, on what you've been hearing from folks.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to. Thanks. So, a lot of our members, they need help. They email in and sometimes they need a little bit of help. Sometimes they need a lot of help. But we do know that the common theme is that they need help and they need assistance to go in the correct direction. And sometimes it could be things just as small and as easy as Adam stated, of making a transition or a pivot to a different type of industry. As you can see, I always tell our members to make sure you kind of keep your eyes and ears open in terms of what's going on in front of you. If you walk into the grocery store and you see that it used to be all normal lanes, and then now you have a checkout, right? Now it's automated where they can self-checkout. I only see one person there as opposed to 5. And that one person there was probably the one that was the best at learning the technology. And so, like you said, you want to do the things that make sure that you don't get displaced and you're not one of those four. But you also pay attention to things like, and I'm sure Adam will speak about the grocery store industry and the fact that there's so many things with contactless delivery where they may deliver your groceries at home for the people who don't want to leave. And then also when you drive up and they drop them off in your car. So companies have had to change the way that they work. And we should also, as as people who are attempting to find, a viable employment, need to think a little bit differently, think outside the box, and we're here to help with that, so that they can know and understand that these are industries that we should be working towards, and maybe those skills that we have, like you mentioned, those retail skills. I've seen people easily transition from retail skills and go immediately into customer service or member service, in which they just translate those skills to over the phone because they already have those person-to-person skills that they use at the stores that they were at. So sometimes it just takes a little bit of providing them with a hint, but they definitely need the help, and they're emailing and contacting us, and we're there to help them and assist them in their journey.
Thank you for that, Demetrius. That's awesome. Really, really important insight. And again, Demetrius and his team and all of us look forward to hearing from all of you, right? So that we can learn, so that we can provide you with support, better and better support. Again, it's support at steadyapp.com. We look forward to hearing any questions that you might have, suggestions you might have. We're here to help and we're here to learn 24/7. So please.
Definitely for all of you, if you have questions, if you need assistance, if there's something that's pending, definitely email us at support@steadyapp.com, at steadyapp.com, and we'll be glad to assist. We love to hear from you, but it's been pinned in the channel as well. Just send those messages directly over to us.
Terrific. Thank you, Demetrius. So, getting into, some of those areas that present a lot of opportunity for growth over the coming years. We have in the U.S. an aging population, right? Where we have baby boomers who were born, shortly after World War II, who are now in their really their 70s and beyond, or at least late 60s and beyond, but mostly 70s and beyond, who are aging. And as a result of that, there is a huge need for healthcare in this country. Clearly, during COVID, there's been a massive need for healthcare, specifically emergency healthcare and various different support services for testing, now for deployment of vaccinations, for contact tracing. But as we move beyond COVID, there are plenty of other health challenges that people are facing in their lives and are going to be facing more and more, specifically with an aging population. You combine that with the fact that people in this world are focused on living longer and longer lives, and as a result of that, people are willing to pay for more and more healthcare services. And so as a result of that, more and more types of healthcare services are developing, and they need talent. They need people who can come in and help them grow their businesses and serve this population. So if you think about everything from being a home aide, right, a home health aide, or an aide in a facility for individuals who may not be able to fully take care of themselves from a daily lives perspective, that is a huge growth industry in America, a massive growth industry. The wages in that industry are not what they should be today. There's a lot of push at a lot of levels, including from entities like SEIU and others, to work to grow the wages of healthcare aides, and I think that will happen, especially now with the government that we have in place. There is a push for an increase in wages for those incredibly important workers that may be yourselves today, and maybe that's an area you can pursue. But it's certainly an area where there always will be work, right? There won't be a shortage of work. If you need work, you will be able to find it, to the extent that, that you're a home healthcare aide. And there's a lot of very easy ways to obtain those certifications in a very short period of time. It's also an area that you can grow upon, right? And that you secure a home health aide license. You may want to go back later on and get a tech license, right? Helping in radiology in an X-ray room, phlebotomist license, so you can start, taking blood, right? Giving shots in facilities, things that are not too terribly difficult to obtain, but where is a very, very high level of demand and a very high, level of confidence that there's going to be consistent growth, and the fact that there will be a need, there will always be work for folks that are operating in those sectors. So healthcare, generally speaking, is at the top of the list. There's so many different facets of that, and again, we'll be working to give more and more guidance as we move forward. It's steady on how to best find those opportunities and understand in more detail, given that we are talking in sort of at a high level today. The next area that I'll talk about is the restaurant business, right? And the prospect for servers and those that are providing service within a food service environment, we don't know what that's going to look like, right? Obviously, there's been a huge change in that world since the beginning of the pandemic. People are dining at home a lot more through restaurant delivery as opposed to necessarily eating at restaurants. I think most of us believe that when the pandemic subsides, that people will return to restaurants as a result of really wanting and missing that social interaction that we miss so much. But at the same time, it won't come all the way back, right? So there will be a move towards people eating more at home. But where the real growth is in food preparation and food delivery. So cooks and things like cloud kitchens, if any of you are not familiar with those yet, which are basically or ghost kitchens, which is where you have effectively a restaurant or a restaurant kitchen that doesn't service people who are dining in, but only services delivery and takeout, right? And those businesses are growing tremendously right now. Huge take right? Large number of those companies throughout the country that are providing that level of service, and that home delivery service and takeout service that is growing so quickly, and they need people who are involved in food preparation. So everything from stocking the supplies to being a cook or being a chef or helping to prepare the produce or prepare the meat. Forgetting the word here, but to bring the meat down to defrost it. Defrost the meat. So there's so many different areas where there's a huge amount of need right now, a huge amount of job growth in that sector. That to the extent that you're thinking about what are you going to do next, right? That is a very high growth sector right now, where you don't need to have a lot of qualifications, really any, to find yourself in a position to find a job there, where there's always going to be work, right? You're always going to be able to find enough work to the extent that you're operating in that environment. So both in ghost kitchens, but also food preparation and restaurants themselves, right? Again, the food service component, a little more unknown in terms of being a server or hostess in a food service environment, but certainly the food prep, that's huge, okay? In food delivery.
Yeah, definitely, Adam. I think it's great that you are highlighting the industries that will continue to grow or maintain and be steady, because those are the things that our members should really highlight and take a good look at, because they're, like you said, there are opportunities for growth, and there are always going to be jobs, whether it be in the healthcare industry, whether it be with manufacturing of new things, or things, just services like with the home health aid, as well as like I said. You go to a restaurant now, things have changed a little bit different, where you're mostly picking up food as opposed to a server serving you at the restaurant. So people who also in that industry have to look to shift and pivot into something a little bit different. But although it's different, it's still viable employment, and it's good for a post-pandemic.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Demetrius. And that's super helpful. Another area which has a lot of growth potential is, anything having to do with technology. And, I hear far too much about, everyone should go to school to be a software developer or an engineer, right? Well, that's not for everybody. It's not for me. It's not for everybody, for sure. If everybody were to go become a software developer, there wouldn't be enough software developer jobs anyway, right? Certainly for those of you who have an interest, have the time to be able to do that, there is a need, right, for software developers. But there's also a lot of other jobs involving technology that don't require the ability to code, right, and develop new software yourselves. There's testers, right? So people who are going to go and test new software. So when a software engineer produces that new code and produces that new facet of software, someone's got to use it. Someone's got to play with it, right? As if they were a user of that system, and made sure it's actually working and making sure that it's doing what it's supposed to do. That's something that's so critically important. And there's various different levels of testers, right? There's the sort of highest end of that, which is called QA. And QA individuals, of which Steady has some amazing QA members, have to understand software and software code, right? So that requires a higher level of study, right? Doesn't require a 4-year degree, but requires the ability to take some classes and understand what you're doing and build up that experience set. But in terms of testing, right, acting as a tester, there are so many opportunities to test technology, right? Working for either testing companies or working for companies themselves who need to hire large pools of testers. A lot of those are contract jobs, right? They're 1099 jobs, but it's a job of which it's it's not as difficult as others to find the ability to move from one to another when that testing is needed, because companies like ourselves who are writing software, building technology, whenever they come up with something new, they've got to test it. They've got to not just have that QA work done, but they've got to test it as if they're a real user, a real member of that technology. So that's an area that certainly has a very high level of growth. Again, if you have any questions on that in particular, please email us, support@steadyapp.com. Before I move on, Demetrius, anything else you want to talk about here?
Yeah, it's great when you talk about technology as well, and I think that as well as healthcare, you have to look at both sides of the coin. One, you look at their opportunities to test, but there are also opportunities for creation. We do see a lot of jobs that come with so many people telecommuting now. There are more computers being made. With so many people having certain, like you said, longer life expectancy and certain vaccinations that are coming up. There's going to be a multitude of jobs in those industries in terms of producing as well. So I think that a lot of times our members, as well as just other people out there looking for positions, don't always think in terms of what might not be like right in front of them or what hasn't been in their past work history. And it's just very, very important to keep an open mind in terms of not only what industry you're in, but also that path when Adam referenced. Some people take a different path and work part-time and gig work when they've been displaced and then eventually do find that dream job. But they use that as a stopgap option to keep them steady and to make sure that their families are healthy and fed and the most things that are most important are taken care of. So I really do like touching on those industries, most specifically the healthcare industry, because it's twofold as well as technology, and then referencing back to the fact that these are times where we should all brush up on additional skills, and those are skills that we should. If we have some extra time, you treat your job search just like a job. You wake up and you put 8 hours in, and you have to remain diligent in terms of your search. I know sometimes it can be tough for our members, especially if you've been displaced for some time. But we want them to remain positive and upbeat. Always easier said than done. But we want to remain positive and upbeat and remain diligent in their search for the right type of position.
Absolutely. Thank you, Demetrius. And again, what's most important is you look out for yourself, right? In that when you're working a job, it's incredibly important to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward and you're acting as a high performer so that you can use that previous employer as a reference, even if you don't want to work there for very long or forever. So while you're there, do your best. But look out for yourself in terms of what job is right? If you need to make a change because it's best for you, best for your family, best for your future, make that change. Make it for yourself, right? And our goal, again, is to arm you with the best information so that you can make the best decisions for yourself. And that's what, yeah, please.
Yeah, sorry. We definitely want our members in that pole position in terms of them being out there. You know, it's a competitive market. It was a competitive market before the pandemic, but we want our members ready to pounce and to keep those, you know, connections and to keep that networking moving in the right direction. So when those things do open up, that they're ready to go. And if they have something in the interim, that's great as well. And like Adam said, we always want you guys to put your, you know, your best foot forward so things work out in an ideal fashion.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. A couple other areas that, you know, we're going to talk about quickly and, you know, start answering some questions in a bit here is social services, right? Counseling, social services. You know, we live in a world today that is so incredibly stressful, right? Yes, our parents and our grandparents has had tremendous stresses. Today, you know, I can't say that, you know, our stresses are as great in terms of, you know, fearing that we're going to be sent off to war as they were during that time, but we have so many more stressors, right, today than we had at that point in time. The amount of work that we need to do in order to make ends meet, the amount of just overwhelming information that comes into us as a result of our digital lives, right, that we live day in and day out creates so many incredible stressors. And as a result of that, you know, people need support, and you know that comes through counseling services, right? Where registered counselors is a extremely registered social workers is an extremely fast-growing area of individuals that can provide support to various different ages, to children all the way up through middle-aged adults to seniors, right? Who need that support, need that helping hand at times when those stresses are just a little bit too much to support on your own. And you know, a lot of now, for those that do have healthcare plans, a lot of healthcare plans now cover those social services as well, right? So that enables more people to be able to have those and access those than in the past. And so that creates the need for more and more workers who are going to be providing that work to support those individuals. And it's a way also to really help people, really try to give back while at the same time generating a career for yourself. You know, same thing with telecounseling, right? Right now, there's a lot of that as a result of the pandemic, but even thereafter, you know, working for hotlines that are providing support to those that may have addictions of various different types, providing support to those that, you know, may have depression, severe depression, where they need a friendly voice at the other end of the phone. Those are services that are so critical. I would also say to any of you, right, those services are available now. They're available at no cost and low cost. And they're pretty easy to find to the extent that you need someone to talk to, right? We know these times are tough for everybody. Doesn't matter who you are. It's not you shouldn't be embarrassed to the extent that you need that extra help, that extra voice to provide that level of encouragement and support during this time. So I think this is an opportunity both to provide that service for those in need, but also for those of you who yourselves or your family or friends could use that support as well, to help guide yourself or guide them on where to find these services. They're not too difficult to find. And remember, if you do have health insurance, most health insurance plans also include now some free coverage, right? Even without copay, especially during the pandemic, for counseling and support services. Okay. One last area, and then I think we'll move beyond this, is trade, right? You know, people ask me all the time, you know, what percentage of your steady members have college degrees? What percentage of your steady members have high school degrees? What percentage have GEDs? What percentage have none? And then they asked what percentage have trade degrees, right? Trade certificates, what, things like electricians and HVAC participants and those that are providing for plumbing services. And, what I tell them is almost none of those individuals are on steady. You know why? They have enough work. They can find work. The work is always there in those trades. And, historically, yeah, some people may think that those weren't the most glamorous positions. You know what? I think they're some of the most glamorous positions today, right? There is so much need for individuals that have those skilled trades, right? That have gone through and taken those technician courses, that have done apprenticeships to develop those skills that are necessary for all of us to live, right? Necessary for us to have circulating air, necessary for us to have heat, necessary for us to have water, right? Running water. That's core to our lives. And the fact that there's still so much opportunity there, and not the fact that not more people have taken advantage of this tremendous opportunity, I think needs to change, right? I mean, the number of individuals who have trade certificates now who are earning six digits every year, year in and year out, is huge, right? The opportunity is so big to get a trade degree. And that's an area that's only going to grow and grow incredibly fast. So again, everything from electricians to HVAC, to plumbing, to dealing directly with heating, installation of home equipment, home appliances, any of those areas, right? Those are tremendous areas for a lot of earnings potential, a lot of growth. And, I hate to tell you, but it's also an area today that, it's not, it should be diverse, right? It should be equal male and female. These have been male dominated jobs. There's no reason why they should be, right? These are great paying jobs that offer an opportunity to everyone. So, again, I'll just remind you, Steady is a platform where people come to earn more money. And those that we see the least come to our platform are those with trade degrees, even less than those that have, master's degrees, right? We have far more master's degrees percentage of our members than we do people who have trade degrees, because they're the ones who are most secure. So just think about that a little bit, right? To the extent that you're considering, what are you going to do next? What are you going to do to increase your earnings potential and put yourself on a path where hopefully someday you're not going to need Steady anymore, right? That's our hope. That's the greatest win for us, is to the extent that we're not able to help you anymore because you're there, you've made it.
Yeah, some of those have become, what they may call a bit of a lost art, but they are great professions, and they're things that we always need. You may not think about a plumber, you may not think about an electrician, but as soon as that power goes out, as soon as you have a water or plumbing issue, it becomes somewhat of an emergency, and then there's always a need for those positions out there. So they will stay employed, and they will stay making a great wage throughout the years.
Without a doubt. So we're going to turn to a couple of questions now, if that's okay with you, Demetrius.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, cool. So I see a question here that was provided to me on opportunities to look for new jobs at a later stage in your career, right? So to the extent that you're at pre-retirement age or even retirement age, right? I think for any of you who have heard the story of Steady, right? The main one of the main drivers of why I started it was the experience that I had with my own family, right? And family in retirement age that didn't have retirement savings, right? Didn't have enough, which is very common today, right? Almost the norm. And those pensions that used to exist that paid for our parents and our grandparents' retirements aren't there anymore. It's very difficult to retire today. People are retiring much later. It's also been very difficult to switch careers later in age for a variety of reasons, including the new skills requirements that perhaps weren't offered when you were in school. In addition to things that are not supposed to exist, but they do, like age discrimination, right? Which absolutely, despite the fact it should not be there, it's there, right? And so we need to do everything that we can to find opportunities for everyone. So I would say, to the extent that you're thinking about a career switch late in your career, there's a lot of intricacies to that, right? And I'm going to do my best to answer this question, but I'm not going to be able to give the same answer for everyone, because there are a lot of different things depending on your background and your history, right? So, I think the first thing that you should do is you should pull out a sheet of paper or a spreadsheet and write down, what are your skills? What are the tasks that you have done in the past, okay, in the jobs that you have been in? What are the things that you feel capable of doing, okay, based on those tasks? And which of those are things that you can still do today, or potentially would be open to doing in the future, right? And these aren't things, don't get too specific on these. Don't focus on, I'll just give a couple of examples. I worked in warehouse at a toy store, right? It's okay, I know how to move merchandise and take inventory, right? Or it's, I was as we talked about earlier, a retail customer support worker, at a candle store, right? Like, don't think about that. Think about the fact that you were providing excellent customer service and also providing an element of sales in that role that you were in previously. And now the next thing that I want you to do, once you've built that list, is type those things into Google, right? Go to Google, type in those terms that we just talked about, those things you've done in the past, and type in jobs that involve these tasks, right? See what you find. My guess is that you're going to find a number of new areas that you hadn't thought about in the past that have job opportunities today. Write down, once you do that search, all of those jobs that you find, those different types of jobs that include those tasks and those skills that you have, and then start doing a search, job search, whether it's on Steady or somewhere else, of those job types, and see which of those are available. See which of those that you're finding a lot of opportunities for. And then when you submit your application and write your resume, don't focus just on the jobs you had in the past, but focus on those skills and on those tasks that you know are relevant to that new job that you're looking for, right? Based on that research you've done. So instead of talking about, again, those specific job types I talked about, ensure that you're highlighting, I've provided 10 years, 20 years of excellent customer support skills. I've provided anything that you can talk about in terms of any awards you've won or rankings you've had, anything like that is super helpful. I've provided 10 years I've had 10 years of sales experience, right? Again, any rankings that you have that you think would show good to an employer, reference those, focus on those, right? Rather than focusing on the history of your work, who you've worked for. Right now, employers care about skills. They care about ability to complete tasks. And so the most important thing to do is, again, figure out how you can take those skills and those tasks that you've had in the past, and where can you use them today in a way that's really going to help the employer and provide you with opportunity irrespective of age. Okay. So that's Demetrius. I don't know if you have anything else to add to that.
Just a little bit. I want to echo those sentiments. I always tell our members to, take inventory of your skills. And that's exactly what these employers are looking for. They're looking for certain skills, and they don't have to be so exact. I worked inventory at a candle store, and now I need to go to another candle store. They don't have to be so exact. Those skills are very transferable. You are providing customer service. So taking the inventory of your skills, seeing if there are any gaps that you might have during this time period. And if you need to enhance some skills that may make you more palatable to these employers and their search as well.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Another question, actually, I heard that there were multiple questions around work from home jobs, right? This is clearly more than ever today is a huge need for a variety of reasons. One is we have this pandemic around us, right? Which we're all aware. Secondarily is that, far too many Americans today have other challenges that prevent them from being out in the workforce or having flexibility of being out in the workforce, ranging from dependent care, whether you're taking care of a child, children, or perhaps other family members that are dependents of yours that you need to provide care to, that don't allow you to be outside of the home. In addition to perhaps whether it be a disability or a health-related issue that prevents you from being out of the home. It also could be transportation related, right? To the extent that you live in an environment where you're not close to potential work and you don't have adequate transportation to get there. The one thing I will say is that while work from home work is increasing, this is where there needs to be a ton of focus from, quite frankly, the government, from state governments, from Congress, in terms of understanding and figuring out more ways to work from home. There's a number of reports that have come out on how many women have had to leave the workforce during the pandemic, right? Who have had to leave their jobs. And if you think about pre-pandemic, we had been seeing great progression in terms of gender diversity in the workforce. We had a long way to go, don't get me wrong, but we were seeing progress. Unfortunately, the pandemic has taken us back, with women obviously far too often still those that are providing that dependent care have had to leave the workforce because they haven't been able to go into an environment and have to work from home. And the problem is today is there are not enough work from home opportunities relative to the number of people that want or need work from home opportunities. So the most important thing there is you need to be aggressive in terms of trying to get those positions, because that's not a 1-for-1, right? That's not an area where every person who wants a work from home job is going to be able to get one. So you're going to have to fight for those jobs, right? You're going to have to set yourself apart. You're going to have to be persistent. You're going to have to, when you apply for those jobs, make sure that you're customizing your application, customizing your resume for that employer, doing research on that employer, and understanding more about that employer so that you can specifically call out and mention in that application, in that resume, in those interviews, why your skill set and your experience is going to be right for that particular employer and that particular type of work. You're going to have to fight, right? You're going to have to win. And so as a result of that, it's also going to be a numbers game. You're going to have to submit as many resumes and applications as you can. You're going to have to work hard to try to find the name of the hiring manager or the HR department to call and follow up, and not just ask for an update, but tell them why they should be considering you and why you should be getting a call to interview, right? All of those interactions should be selling yourself, right? Not looking for feedback, but not looking for feedback on where your resume is, but selling yourself, right? In those conversations, you've got to look out for yourself. You've got to set yourself apart, especially if you're looking for a work from home position right now, because again, there unfortunately is not enough work from home positions. There's not enough for everyone who wants one. Hopefully that will change over time, but today that is the case.
Yeah, 100% agree, Adam. You have to remain diligent in regards to your search. Apply, and then monitor. We have to make sure that you're following up, that you're networking, that you add in that human element, that they know who you are, and you get in front of those hiring managers. That could set you apart a little bit more so than another candidate, and that could be the determining difference in you securing one of those work from home positions that are very ideal due to flexibility. And the same with part-time and gig work, that flexibility really comes into key, especially for a lot of our member base.
Absolutely. And then I think we'll touch on one more here, and then perhaps do a little bit of a wrap up. Is there's question around social services, right? So how do you provide social services to the extent that you don't have a multi-year degree that certifies you in those areas? There are a variety of different types of social services that don't require counselor degrees, right? So to the extent that you don't have a 4-year degree or the ability to obtain a counselor's license, as I talked about earlier, there are plenty of phone-based positions. Think again, like, being on the other side of an addiction hotline, being on the other side of a depression, or, I hate to say it, but a suicide prevention hotline, right? Being a voice that, as long as you're a friendly voice, a caring voice, someone who is able to provide that voice of kindness to someone who really needs it during that very challenging time in their life, which far too many people are having today, that those jobs are available without counselor licenses, right? If you search for them, you can get trained to work for a hotline. And lots of those also right now can be work from home positions in certain instances. And so I would encourage you to not focus on searching out counselor positions if you don't want to obtain a license, but focus on how do I provide support services to those that require those support services, generally on a whim, right? Those are generally a lot of those are hotline-based positions where you're on the other end of a line and you're there. You provide that intermediate support. To the extent that someone needs a higher level of support at that point in time, you very well may be guided to transfer them to someone who is a certified counselor who can provide an additional level that you haven't been trained in. But in terms of working for a hotline, a support service hotline, that would probably be my best recommendation in terms of where you can start, right? If you're looking to get into that world without a degree or without a certification as a counselor or a therapist. Cool. So, Demetrius, we're down here to our final minutes. So, would love to, to hear further thoughts from you. Clearly today, the focus has been on how to best position yourself, post-pandemic, and would love your final thoughts, and then I'll give mine.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to give a couple final thoughts, and most of it grouped around thinking outside of the box and sort of changing the path in which you're thinking. I've seen this from some of our members, and I've also seen this personally from a colleague of mine who was displaced from his job, went on to find a part-time job because he wanted to continue to pursue the path that he wanted in terms of his full-time employment. He was able to secure a full-time employment, somewhat of a dream job. And he kept that part-time position because he wanted to get back to and maintain the status that he was pre-pandemic. And he was thinking outside of the box. He didn't want to sit on the sidelines and let the household go down to a certain minimum in terms of his cash flow. So he thought outside of the box and said that I'd be able to have the flexibility to get into a part-time position and continue to interview for a full-time position. So that's just to say that, our members, and you said a lot of great things that I think are great food for thought for them, but just think outside of the box. Know that you need to be persistent in your search. It's about patience and persistence. It's about being upbeat and positive, as Adam stated, and I will as well. They're very trying times right now, but we all need to uplift each other and give each other help and assistance in terms of the path that we can take to better ourselves and better that environment in terms of where we're working and what we're doing. It doesn't always necessarily have to be exactly what you're looking for you to be happy in that situation. You might find that even those part-time jobs may turn into a full-time position and maybe something that you like more than what you really thought. So just keep an open mind, listen to good advice, be diligent in regards to your search. Like I said, if you're not employed, treat it like a job. Treat it like you're employed and you're waking up and that's your 9 to 5 where you're going to look for employment. And those are the individuals that are going to, I don't even want to say they get lucky or luck into a position, because it's their hard work and it's their effort and it's their diligence that's going to the right opportunity.
Yeah. Absolutely. They've earned it, right, Demetrius, at that point, right? They're going to set themselves apart. So right. That's awesome. So I don't have much to add to that. I think, the important thing is to remember, as I said in the last webinar as well, you're not alone, right? You are far from alone. In fact, if you're having struggles, challenges today at various different levels, first off, our prayers are with you. We're doing everything that we can to build a platform to support you. It will get better and better over time. We're working as fast as we possibly can. But our goal is for you to be as successful as you put your mind to. You're not alone. Don't let those challenges take you away from what you need to do to work your way out of those challenges. We know it's not easy. It's far from easy. And, at this point in time, right, you really need to focus on yourself and your family, and focus on how can you create a permanent fix if possible, right? Sometimes short-term fixes are needed. Sometimes you have to do what it takes to make sure that you can put food on the table tomorrow or make your rent, right, at the end of the week. But you also got to focus on what you can do so that you don't have to worry about that every single week. right? So that you can put yourself in a position where you can focus on working and generating that income, but where you don't have to have those same worries every week because you've invested the time and the energy and the persistence and the positive nature, as Demetrius talked about, to put yourself in that position. And our goal is to provide you with the tools, the information to hopefully make better decisions in terms of where to spend those incredibly valuable moments of your time, especially right now. So, the theme is, again, persistence. I will say aggressiveness because I think you need to be. You need to sell yourself. You need to focus on understanding the skills that you have, those tasks that you've done, how they're relevant to other positions. You need to focus on applying to as many jobs as possible. The time that you take to apply, I know, is not small to apply for a job, but the most important investment you can make, to the extent you're trying to, improve your finances, is to apply for a lot of jobs and apply for them in a personalized way, customized to that employer. Because, listen, if you're able to, get a job at $15 an hour instead of 13, or 20 instead of 18, or get 40 hours instead of 25 that are unstable, right? That's going to change your life. So invest the time in doing that. Now's the time to do that. Now's the time to think about what type of changes that you can make to put yourself on a better path. Because we're going to have a little bit of a clean slate when the pandemic ends, right? There's so many individuals who never struggled before, who are now having to reinvent themselves. It's going to give a little bit of an opportunity for everyone to reinvent themselves to some extent. And if you're better and faster and more dedicated to that reinvention and that research, you're going to come out ahead. I have no doubt you're going to come out ahead. Okay. So I'm just going to end in that, we're here for you. We will continue to do everything we can. We love hearing from you. It's support@steadyapp.com. We want to hear from you on what we can do better to help your lives, to help you earn better, to help you lift your income, to help you find better work and the right work. And the only way that we're going to learn how to do better is if we hear from you. So we hope we do. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.